Today, we welcome Joey Coleman, a professional speaker and writer on all things customer experience. Joey is the Chief Experience Composer at Design Symphony, a customer experience design consultancy that helps companies create memorable and lasting experiences for their customers. He is the author of the best-selling book, Never Lose a Customer Again, which provides practical tips and strategies for creating long-lasting customer relationships. Joey is also a sought-after keynote speaker and has delivered presentations at conferences and events around the world. Thank you so much for being here, Joey.
Oh, Lauren, I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much for the kind invitation. And thanks to everybody who's listening in. Appreciate you spending some time with us as well, and really looking forward to our conversation.
Yes, me too. There's so many different topics we can cover today, but I always like to get started just by providing some context for all of our listeners. So if maybe you could just start off by telling us a little bit about your background and what drew you to customer experience in the first place.
Yeah, my background is crazy eclectic.
I'm excited.
I'll give you the speed version, and you can drop in on any pieces that sound interesting. So, grew up in a small town in rural Iowa and went to the University of Notre Dame for undergrad, studied government and international relations, went straight to law school where I studied litigation, international law, and national security law. During my time in and around law school, I had the opportunity to work for the United States Secret Service, the White House and Office of Counsel to the President, and the Central Intelligence Agency. I then did business consulting for a company called the Corporate Executive Board. I then practiced criminal defense law for about 5 years. I then taught at the postgraduate level, basically night business school. I then ran a division of a promotional products company. I then started and ran an ad agency doing experience branding and logo design. And then I became a full-time professional speaker and writer. So when I list out all those crazy jobs, one of two things happens. People either think, oh my gosh, this guy just couldn't hold down a job. He gets fired all the time. Or they think, what is going on with these like completely divergent jobs and careers? And how does somebody take all of those positions and end up being a customer experience and employee experience, presenter and writer and consultant? The answer to that question is that in each of those jobs I had, the way that you excelled, the way that you served the people that you worked with, the way that you achieved any semblance of accomplishment or production or, praise was to have a keen understanding of the human condition. Why do human beings do the things they do? And what can we do to convince, persuade, encourage, motivate them to do the things we'd like them to do? And so that's the thread that, looking back on my career over the last 30 years, it's very visible. That wasn't necessarily as visible as I was going through it. I just always had a philosophy that I never had a job that I quit because I didn't like it. I always found a different job or a different career that I liked more than the one I was in, and I migrated towards that. So it wasn't that people ask me all the time, they're like, oh, you didn't like being a lawyer? I loved being a lawyer. Oh, you didn't like working in the government? No, I loved working in the government. It was amazing. I just found other things that I liked more.
That is so cool. Also, you definitely practiced that introduction before, because that was the greatest run through of a career I've ever heard in my entire life.
Well, I lived it. You know what I mean? It's been an experience. So
wow. I don't even know where to unpack that, but that's really interesting that you say that, because I'm curious to know, at what point did you realize that the whole common thread along that was to do with the customer-centric focus and the customer experience side of things? Like, what was the light bulb moment in your head?
Yeah. So two pieces. This is a great question. Two answers. There's one when I realized the connection between the jobs I had. And there was a separate realization as it related to customer and employee experience. So the first one was when I was in law school, I read a book by William Gibson, who folks may be familiar with from the new show on Amazon, Peripheral, and he's a science fiction writer.
Yep.
And he wrote a book called Pattern Recognition. And the main character in that book is particularly adept at recognizing patterns and spotting things that other people miss or can't see or don't see. And I don't know that there's ever been a protagonist in a book I've read that I felt that I related to more. When I read this book, I felt like, oh, the world doesn't see the same patterns I do. And I realized that so many of my successes and achievements had come from recognizing patterns. So then I started to double down on that. Fast forward to when I'm running my ad agency. And what happens is my job running an ad agency is to create websites, marketing campaigns, logos, brand materials to drive attention and new prospects and new customers to the organizations I worked with. What I realized from a pattern point of view was that 2, 3, 6 months later, while we had made the phone rings, while we had gotten new people into the funnel, my clients weren't keeping the customers that we had worked so hard to acquire. This pattern annoyed me. This pattern frustrated me. And so I started working with my clients, and anytime they hired me for a marketing engagement, I would say, I am more than happy to do this, but it comes with a commensurate retention engagement. And I started building that into the process so that we weren't going to spend even 1 minute bringing someone in if we didn't have a strategic, thoughtful, well-executed plan for keeping them in the fold once they arrive.
That is so cool. And were companies not thinking about that before you implemented the strategies?
Correct. The typical company pays little to no attention to retention.
That is crazy.
And there's a couple reasons for that, right? There's a couple reasons that are both scientific and operational that for that. Number one, scientifically, as humans, as a general rule, we like the pursuit more than the catch. We need only look at a bar on Friday night to understand this, right? Like we love chasing more than we love catching. Extrapolate that out to the difference between dating and marriage and divorce rates, and we can see that pattern in human behavior, right? So this is how it shows. Biologically, we over-index on things that stand out and are different as opposed to things that are the same. This comes from our evolutionary approach of, when you're in the savannah and there's a saber-toothed tiger, your job is to notice the shifting pattern in the grass and the thing that stands out, because that's going to keep you alive. So we have a tendency to chase the shiny object, to chase the new thing.
More exciting.
So there's the biology piece. More exciting, exactly. So that's a biological piece of why we over-index on acquisition over retention. Then we come to the structural piece. In most organizations, the CEO came up through marketing and sales. They didn't come up through customer support or customer service. In most organizations, the account management customer service team reports to the head of marketing.
Right. Yeah.
So when the head of marketing is in the C-suite meeting with the CEO, do you think they're going to talk about marketing? By the way, their title is head of marketing. Or do you think they're going to talk about retention and customer experience? They're going to talk about marketing. It's what they're paid for. And by the way, the CEO is going to be more excited to talk about marketing because that's the way they came up, or sales, or some type of operation. That's why Apple, in many ways, right now, with Tim Cook as CEO, is so fascinating. Tim Cook came up through supply chain management. What? He's the anomaly. That is not the norm. And so we see how Apple has changed and has become even more profitable and more efficient and more effective, which at the time it was doing this was kind of brilliant, because for a global company to really be honing in and dialing down on supply chain made their market share increase dramatically. Their products were so beautifully designed and so well created that they actually didn't need to do nearly as much marketing. You don't see nearly as many ads for Apple as you do for other brands. Why?
So true.
Well, because the brand sells itself. And the big challenge Apple has is the product people want in the store? And or can we ship it to them quickly? So that's why Tim Cook has had such success as Apple's CEO. So I think we've got biological reasons and we've got organizational structure reasons why people focus more on acquisition than retention.
It's really interesting too, because even I actually think about, I'm a complete Apple user from my phone to my laptop to every device.
As am I. I love it.
And it's so true that I honestly don't even think about the price tag on any of these things. Meanwhile, a $20 thing of makeup or something like that, I think about time and time again because I'm always considering the purchase. But also part of that is that I could literally pick up a new iPhone in under 30 minutes if I needed to, whether it's picking up at the Apple store, ordering it, buying it at a retailer, whatever it might be. It's so easy, which is interesting because I never thought about it from that point of view, but it's interesting to me how you point out these patterns, because all the examples you just gave, all the thoughts and the insights you just gave kind of go based off this pattern recognition theme that you're talking about, which brings me to my next question, which I'm excited about because I was looking more into your book, The Never Lose a Customer Again, because even if you just think about the podcast that we're doing here, we bring on all these wonderful guests like yourself to talk about retention because there's so many different ways to look at it. And I can't stress that enough. I think we've already had maybe 10 to 12 guests and everyone's given a different perspective. And so what I'm curious about is that in your book, you talk about the 8 emotional phases that customers go through. And I'm assuming you came up with this or you ideated on this based on your experiences, be it this notion that people are so focused on acquisition and not retention, and the companies that you've worked with your agency. So could you walk me through the 8 phases? Because I am dying to know what they are. And I think they'd be very actionable for every listener that's listening to this.
Yeah, absolutely, Lauren. And you are spot on that they came in, for lack of a better way of putting it, in the arena. They came from the experience of working with clients, and they also came from my experience as a consumer. What I think is really interesting when we think about customer journeys or customer acquisition or customer retention, we're customers all day, every day. We don't need to have this big strategy session to figure out, like, what do customers want? 9 times out of 10, we can just say, well, what do I want? I want ease of use. I want beautiful design. I want great value at a reasonable price. If something goes wrong, I want to be able to fix it or get it repaired. I want a company that's values align with my values. That's kind of a newer request that consumers are making, but is becoming a bigger piece of every conversation. And so when we look at these patterns, we can recognize that there is a typical journey that a customer goes through. And I've divided it into 8 phases, and they all start with the letter A. Now, the reason they all start with the letter A is this idea that if you get all of these right, it's like getting straight A's on your report card from your customers. They love you. They're scoring you very highly. Okay, so I'll give you the fire hose quick version of the 8 phases, and then we can dive into any aspects.
Let's do it.
All right. Phase 1 is the assess phase. This is when a prospective customer is trying to decide whether or not they want to become a customer. In common parlance, we call this marketing and sales. They're checking out your website. They're looking at your brochure. They're maybe having a conversation with somebody that already uses your product or service. They're maybe doing a sales call. These are all the things where they're considering, is this a relationship I want to get into? We then come to phase 2, the admit phase. This is when the prospect admits that they have a problem or a need that they believe you're going to be able to help them with. They sign on the dotted line. They hand over their hard-earned cash. They transition from being a prospect to being a customer. They then come to phase 3. And pro tip, this is where things often start to go off the rails. Phase 3 is the affirm stage. In the affirm stage, we need to reaffirm the decision that the customer just made to become a customer. In common parlance, we call this buyer's remorse. Now, I'd be willing to bet, well, let's do a little experiment. Everybody who's listening, raise your hand. Go ahead and raise it. I know it's weird. You might be at the gym, you're driving, you're doing the dishes. Raise your hand if you've heard of the phrase buyer's remorse. Come on. You've said, okay, thank you. That was like a half-hearted raise for some of you, okay? I could hear it through the airwaves, right? But here's the thing. We've all heard the phrase buyer's remorse. Scientifically, every purchase produces some level of buyer's remorse. But what very few organizations have is a system and process in their business designed to address the buyer's remorse that we scientifically know every customer experiences. Oh, and by the way, as a little aside, the research also shows the higher the cost of your product or service, the greater the buyer's remorse. So if you're one of those folks that's like, we got to charge more, we got to increase our profitability, we got to get the numbers up, great, but know that you're ramping up the buyer's remorse as well. People normally talk about buyer's remorse as it relates to cars and houses, the 2 biggest investments most people will ever make. College is on there too, now that I think about it. And there's also a lot of good buyer's remorse about college, but I digress. Okay, phase 4. The activate phase. This is the first real moment of truth. If it's a product, this is when the product arrives at your house or you get it home from the store. If it's a service, it might be a kickoff meeting or the first time they come to mow your lawn or whatever service you've signed up for. In the activate phase, we want to energize the relationship. We want to let the customer know that doing business with us is going to be unlike any business experience they've ever had. We want to give a preview of the things to come. We then come to phase 5, the acclimate phase. Now, second pro tip, this is the other place where a lot of organizations fall off the rails. And here's why. When you run a business, you've delivered your product or your service hundreds of times, thousands of times, tens of thousands of times. But to a brand new customer, they have no idea what to expect. They're brand new. They don't know your system. They don't know your process. They don't know your procedures. They're not reading the instructions manual. They're pulling it out of the box and trying to make it work. We talked about Apple earlier. You get a new iPhone, it doesn't come with an instruction manual. You just turn it on. Actually, you don't even need to turn it on. You just touch it and it's already pre-charged and ready to go. Okay. Now you're off to the races. So in the acclimate phase, we want to hold their hand, help our customers navigate and know what comes next so that we increase their use and their involvement with our product or service. We then come to phase 6, the accomplish phase. This is when the customer achieves the goal they had when they originally decided to buy your product or service. Every customer has a vision of what using your product or service or being involved with you in a business relationship is going to produce. If we're not tracking that, if we're not measuring their progress towards that, if we're not celebrating with our customer when they achieve that, when they accomplish, they'll probably forget to celebrate. And it's an open loop that never gets closed for them. If we don't have the accomplish phase, we don't get the chance to go to phase 7 and 8, the final 2 phases. Phase 7, the adopt phase, when a customer becomes loyal to us and only us. They're 100% bought in. They're loyal. They're committed. They're not going to look at the competition. If we make it, they're going to be interested in buying it. And last but not least, the advocate phase, the holy grail, nirvana, the final phase when our customers become our raving fans, singing our praises far and wide, referring new business, increasing their business with us, writing reviews. The main problem, Lauren, that most organizations have is they want to jump from admit when you decide to be a customer all the way to advocate in the same conversation. This is a horrible idea. The equivalent of this in our personal relationships is basically sitting in a situation where you go on a first date, right? And you're sitting there at dinner and you're just like, you haven't even ordered yet. And you say, so when am I going to get to meet your parents? Why don't you slow your roll there, Trigger? Okay. There is no need for you to be talking about that when we haven't even gotten the appetizers yet. So as businesses, we do the same thing. And I get that there's some people that say, well, you need to ask earlier because you got to start asking while they're in the high emotion of just having purchased with you. No, remember, they're not in the high emotion. They're in the low emotion of buyer's remorse. That is not the time to ask them. Don't start asking for referrals until there is something worthy of referring.
Yep.
If I haven't used your product, if I haven't experienced your service, I'm not going to be interested in referring it. And if you doubt the validity of this statement, anybody who's listening, just think about your own referral behavior. Do you refer? If you find something on Amazon, right, and you order it, do you start going on social media and posting about it and going, woohoo, just ordered new eyeliner. Look at this. It's going to be amazing. No. You wait until you receive it. You put it on. You see how it looks. You go out. Maybe you get some compliments from your friends. And then you're like, okay, but maybe it was just tonight. I was feeling my mojo in another way. I better try it a couple more times. And then after you maybe have used the entire thing of mascara, now you're like, all right, now I love this. This performs in a variety of situations. This is amazing. It works. I feel good wearing it. People tell me I look good wearing it. I'm 100% in. Now you might write a review, or now you might post something about on social media, but you're not going to do that on first use.
Absolutely. I find this really interesting because actually, as you were going through the 8 phases, I always think about my own experience and things that I've experienced as a customer myself. Because I would call myself a pretty tough customer. I don't give into things pretty that easily, I would say. And I do analyze a lot before I buy something new, whatever it might be. And actually, it's really funny that you're talking about this because I'm just thinking through how I just went through the 8 phases with this one brand. So I used to use this shampoo and conditioner brand called Function of Beauty. And I've actually talked about it on the show before, but now I might seem like a traitor because I've just switched to a different brand. And the reason is the company Function of Beauty got me right before the accomplished phase. So they got me all the way through. They did all the great branding, all the great things. Everything was wonderful, but they didn't quite get me at the accomplished phase. And the fact is, it didn't help me accomplish what I needed to. Nicer looking hair. And I found that I wasn't achieving the goals that I wanted to for my own hair. So the issue that happened at this other company, Pros, that I just got, they came in right at the perfect time. Obviously, they were sending me Instagram ads while I purchased Function of Beauty, and I wasn't really thinking about it at the time. But then I realized that Pros not only had a better consultation throughout the entire thing, but they actually just got me at the what's the name of the 7th phase again?
The adopt phase, where you become loyal and committed.
Yes. And you know why that happened? It was actually because of the packaging that I received when it got shipped to my house. Because myself, I've been having a tough time trying to figure out the right shampoo and conditioner to be using. Have all these different issues that I'm trying to figure out, whether it's like volume or oil control or frizz or this or that, right? And it's very frustrating because hair is something that everybody unfortunately has to see. And so I was really trying to put time and effort into figuring out, okay, what's going to work for me. But then when this Pros delivery got delivered to my house, not only do they give you the instructions to make sure that it fits all the goals, but it also gives you the breakdown on every single goal and the weather environments that are happening in your area, because they take your postal code and things like that. So they were telling me there's hard water, there's UV rays. Obviously, I'm in harsh Toronto, so the snow and the dry weather and everything really affects my hair as well. And then to take it even a step further, which really was the icing on the cake for me, was all these shampoo brands attach instructions on how to use the shampoo. So sometimes people say, do 2 uses, do this, that, whatever. Right. However, they took this one step further and they said, okay, here's your instructions, but here's what you need to do next. They gave me a playlist about all these different podcasts and things that I could listen to about improving your hair routine, things like that. If you're really concerned about it, what to do, blah, blah, blah. Not the best part, but still just an interesting aspect to it. And then under that, they basically have a, I guess what you call like a VIP service. I'm sure everybody gets it, but I don't care. I feel like a VIP. And it's a VIP service that I can book a call with a hair consultation expert if things aren't going the way that I expect in the next 2 to 3 months, because obviously you have to give it some time for it to actually settle in and do something. All of this combined, slash the fact that they have a subscription service that are saying, if you like this, then you'll get 50% discount every time you order every 1 or 2 months. I was like, wow, this is really well thought out, because they probably realize that people are ordering very customized hair care products because they're having all these issues. And they've really tackled every single last detail. I had the time of my life using that shampoo and conditioner.
Lauren, I love it. I want to use Pro shampoo now.
I was going to say, go and buy it.
And this is how we create advocates. Right?
Exactly.
We create advocates by making our customers feel seen, heard, and understood.
Exactly.
You were having this challenge, and even though you've never met anyone, I presume, from Pros, you're checking out their ads, you're checking out their packaging. Yeah. They're speaking to you as if you're a friend. Exactly. They're speaking to you as if we're in it together. They're outlining what some clear goals are, and they're setting a clear expectation that, hey, our goal is in 2 to 4 months to get you to this feeling about your hair. And if for some reason we don't, we're ready to jump in and help you to figure out how to get you to this goal.
Exactly.
Right. And so it's that extra little reminder. Now, what's going to be interesting to see is, given that, and I love, oh my gosh, there were so many things about that story that I loved, the VIP consultation, the, giving you insights about the weather and like what you should do as it relates. I mean, huge level of personalization and customization, which is absolutely beautiful. What I'm curious to see is to loop back in with you in 2 or 3 months, see how it's working, and are they looping in with you to see how it's working? This is the piece that I think so many businesses epically fail on. They never check in with the customer to see how it went. At best, they send something saying, hey, write a review of us on Amazon. No. Stop asking for the review. First ask, how did it go? On a scale of 1 to 10, what are you feeling? My favorite survey question to ask customers is stop, start, continue. This is how that question goes. Yep. What is going on in our relationship that we should stop doing? What in our relationship are we not doing right now that we should start doing? And what's happening in our relationship right now that you're loving and that we should continue to do no matter what? Stop, start, continue. These are questions every business on the planet can ask their customers and ask them regularly. Yet so often, especially in like an e-commerce or a product type scenario, we buy something and then we never hear from the business. How did it go? Did you like that? Did it work? Are you happy? Sometimes just asking that question is enough to start to build loyalty and connection.
Yeah, so true. I'll keep you updated. Also,
Sounds good. I love it. I love it.
They actually already have done a couple check-ins where they're saying, how was the first wash? How was this? How was that? So I do feel quite confident that they will check in. I'm curious to know because I'm sure they have many customers. So it's really nice that it still does feel quite personalized on this level.
Nice.
But
nice.
I'll definitely keep you locked in because
please do. I love it.
To even know how I feel about it soon. But and I'm curious to dive in a little bit more because we talk about customer retention and we talk about customer experience. Now, truthfully, before this podcast, sometimes I didn't know the difference between the two. And it's something I'm learning each and every day between what's the difference between the relationship between experience and retention. And so I'm sure you and your team have a view on this with your work, because I'm sure there's things that go into each, but I'm curious, what do you think about the relationship between customer experience and retention, and how does that look when you work with your customers?
Yeah, if I may, I'm going to add a third
Oh,
concept to
please
this
do.
definition base, if I may, which is
Throw it
customer
in there.
service. Okay. Because I think lots of times people confuse or use customer service and customer experience synonymously, which
Yeah, I've
I can
definitely done that
understand why
before.
I understand why they do that, and no judgment in that. I just think it creates confusion, not only in the marketplace, but it creates confusion within our teams or within our organizations. And
Right.
then we'll come to customer retention. So I define customer service as the assistance and advice that is provided by a company to people who buy or use its products or services. So customer service is like, hey, you've got our stuff. Let us help you. Let us solve this problem, et cetera, et cetera. Customer experience is how customers perceive their interactions with your company. It's more emotional. It's more akin to the feelings and the vibe of your business than the practical elements of your business. So customer service, if you will, sits underneath a broader umbrella of customer experience. It's a part of customer experience, but they're not co-equals.
Mhm.
The other thing I think of is that customer service is reactive, whereas customer experience is proactive. Customer service, oh, something happens, we got to act. Customer experience, we should design something that creates interactions and actions
Okay.
for our people. Then when we layer customer retention on top of that, I think of customer retention as being twofold. There's the practical analytical aspect of how many of your customers are staying. So, we look at, how many customers did you have last month? How many new customers did you get? How many customers did you lose? It's paying attention to kind of what your defection rates are and kind of your ongoing growth. But I also think of customer retention as a philosophy. It's more of is your business designed for long-term relationships or transactional relationships? I'm not saying that either is bad. Let me be abundantly clear. A lot of people poo-poo on transactional relationships and they're like, oh, that's just bad and that's terrible. If I'm on a road trip and I'm going to stop and get gas, it's going to be a transactional interaction. I
Yeah.
want to put gas in the car and keep moving down the road. I'm probably not coming back to this gas station. Okay. Now, if it's a chain, maybe they're trying to get some retention of me long term. If they're trying to increase their own profitability, maybe they're trying to get me to come in from the pump, which, as anybody that knows about how gas stations work, they have very thin margins at the pump. All their money is made inside the convenience store. So what are they doing to get me inside to actually buy some snacks for the road trip? But that's a transactional relationship, and that's okay. But if it's anything that isn't transactional, I want at least to feel like there's a desire to make it more relational. But a lot of businesses don't seem to care about that.
Right. And I'm curious because that explanation was really helpful in defining the differences, but I want to know, how do we put that into actual action? So what are some questions, or what are some, yeah, I guess questions is the best way to go, because really what this comes down to, even from the point that you made earlier about how you talked about these acquisition strategies, but then you also made sure there was a very well thought out, well executed plan for the retention side of things for each and every customer that comes by. It's almost this whole theme of creating a customer-centric culture. And that might be wonderful, fantastic, buzzword, this, that, whatever. How do we actually make this all come to fruition? So how do you take everything that you just explained to me, and how do companies ask themselves the right questions, or what do they do in order to get these needs and desires of these customers and actually create the customer retention, the customer experience, the customer service, and really embed that into their business? Big question, but
I love it. No, a big question, but an important question. And I love it. So here's the thing. I think if you show me where you spend your time and you show me where you spend your money, I can tell you what you care about. If you show me where you spend your time, show me where you spend your money, I can tell you what you care about. Most businesses have a marketing plan. Most businesses have a marketing budget. Most businesses have a marketing department, or at least somebody who oversees marketing and the function of marketing and sales. Very few businesses have a written out retention plan. Very few businesses have a retention budget. Very few businesses have someone who wakes up every morning and all they think about is retaining the customers they already have. They've got plenty of folks on the team who wake up and think about, let's get some more. How many wake up and think about, let's keep the ones we have? So the first thing I would do as an organization is say, we need a retention plan, we need a retention budget, and we need someone who wakes up every morning thinking about retention. That umbrella also fits into all things experience, right? Because anybody who's doing retention, they're going to by default be looking at the experience. I believe that every organization, regardless of its size, should have a defined role of chief experience officer, the person who's looking at what is the overall experience from the time someone first hears about us to the time where they're a raving fan advocate in phase 8. Who is responsible for that arc, that journey, making sure that every step along the way is going well. Now, in most organizations, I would recommend that at least in the beginning, when you're small, 2 or 3 employees, it probably needs to be the CEO or the leader that has that vision, or the COO. It needs to be somebody with status in the organization and importance in the organization who can pay attention and track that. But pretty quickly, CEOs, again, remember, most of them came up through marketing and sales, start shifting towards the marketing and sales only. That's where you need to make sure there's an equal amount of attention paid on the post-sales experience. And then when it comes to what can you do to start to roll it out, well, I would posit there's a couple different approaches. I like looking at what are you doing in the first 100 days. Those 8 phases I talked about are based on solid research from Harvard Business School, Stanford Business School, Bain & Company from around the world that basically shows that the behavior that happens in the first 100 days is more dispositive, more indicative of the long-term satisfaction and delight of the customer than any other time period in the relationship. In
Why
short,
is
if
it
you get
100 days? Sorry to interrupt you.
it's human behavior. It's just the way it works. So the practical reality is most businesses, well, let's look at pros. What did pros tell you? Hey, somewhere between 2 and 4 months, let's loop back in and see how it's going. And that would be 100 days. Right? Because you need time to try it. You need time to experience it. You need time to do it. We need time to establish the relationship. We need time to lay the foundation. So in most interactions, we need that time, or at the very least, we need to walk somebody through the 8 phases. Now, can we compress that to under 100 days? Sure, absolutely. But in many, if not most businesses, it's going to be closer to 2 or 3 months before somebody really has got a feel for how it's going. Because the typical human will give you a little more leash than you think. They'll give you a try. Let's go back, and we don't need to call them by name. Go back to that first shampoo. You didn't use it once and then go, nope, this isn't for me. You used it several times. Why? Because you were hopeful that thing that you had invested time and money in would actually deliver on the promise that you thought was made based on their marketing materials. But after a while, I don't know if it was 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, whatever it was.
It was a year and a half, actually.
It was a year and a half.
Yeah.
Fascinating. So here's the thing. Long time. What that proves, Lauren, is you were willing to stay a lot longer and keep trying.
Very true.
Now, the missed opportunity from that shampoo company was it sounds like they didn't spend a lot of time communicating with you after that initial purchase to see how is it working.
Yep.
This happens in every industry. Friends who are listening, don't get lost in the shampoo example, okay? This applies to every industry. Let me ask you this, and this maybe speaks to more privilege, so forgive me if this question positions itself that way, but I find that it's fairly common. The typical person in the United States has at least one article of clothing in their closet that they purchased but have never worn.
Absolutely. Or in my own experience, yes.
Yeah. Okay. I have that in my experience. Sounds like you do in yours. Most people listening probably have had this experience in some capacity, either a pair of shoes, a dress, a shirt, something that you purchased with the intention of wearing, but you never wore. Some, I would go even so far as to say the tags are still on it.
Guilty.
Right? Some people have books that they purchased that they haven't read. Some people have Lego sets they purchased that they haven't put together. Some people have kitchen utensils that they purchased that they never used. So we have a behavior in most humans where we will buy or acquire things that we never use. We could have a whole separate podcast and conversation about why that happens and whether that's good or bad. But what I'm more interested about in this conversation about customer retention is all those things that we didn't use. Did the companies ever come back to us and say, hey, have you worn the shirt yet? send us a pic. We'd love to see how you look in it. Hey, have you used the colander to make some spaghetti yet? When you do, send us a pic. We'd love to see you using it. Now, what's fascinating by saying, send us a picture, we'd love to see you using it or wearing it or doing it, is when you send that and I say, oh my gosh, Lauren, you look amazing. Look at that hair. So much bounce. It's fabulous. Number one, you feel good. You feel seen, you feel heard, you feel understood. And then it's not a big leap for me to say, hey, would it be okay if I shared this on social media on our account as one of the people who got great results with our shampoo because you look fabulous? Change it from shampoo. Hey, is it okay if I shared this on our social media channel because that spaghetti you made with that colander looks delicious? Hey, would you be okay with us sharing on social media that photo of you at the party wearing that shirt you bought because damn, you look great? Most humans are going to say, of course.
Of course.
And that marketing is going to be exponentially more effective than the staged photo shoot you did. Because not only are we going to show the user-generated content or the customer-generated content, but we're going to tag Lauren, and all of Lauren's friends who know, like, and trust her are going to see that Lauren uses this type of shampoo, that Lauren wears this brand of clothing, that Lauren uses this type of colander. Again, it's not about the product or the service, people. It's about the connection.
Yes, I love that. Wow, that was a knowledge bomb. Just boom. You really brought it all together really nicely. And it honestly is true because you do tend to find with things like makeup, clothing. I'm just more so, again, thinking about my own experience. Even things like luggage, you really find yourself attaching yourself to the identity of the brand. And there's even another brand that I love so much, and I talk about it 24/7. And I've bought this one product for every single person I know because they must be wondering why on earth I'm buying so many. But the funny thing is they actually haven't checked in. I just really like the product so much and I've accomplished my goal of feeling like that. So, and also actually they even showed very real pictures of people experiencing the glow up per se of using this product. And it actually, I saw the exact same thing. So I was like, oh, they're very legit. This is actually working. It's not an edited photo. You know what I mean?
Nice. I love it. So here's a fascinating opportunity for that brand. If you look at your customers' behaviors. If you're not tracking this, here's a huge opportunity for everyone listening. Yeah. You have some customers that are buying your product or service more than others. And they might have a single product that they're buying a lot of. And you might know from your usage that they're buying more than they could be using, which by default means they're probably giving it away or gifting it. That is a huge opportunity to say, hey, what's going on? What's the scoop here? We love that you're buying all these, but what are you doing? And you might say, oh my gosh, I love this product so much. I buy it for all of my friends. Oh, yep. Lauren, that's so sweet. It seems like what you normally do is you buy it and have it shipped to your house. Do you then give it to your friend? Or they may look at the data and say, hey, it seems like you buy it using your credit card, but you ship it to somewhere else, to the other person's house. We would love, since you do such a great job of supporting our product, to make that gift-giving experience even more personalized and special for you. So we made this little video with our team, and we thought we'd share it with you. And if it's useful, feel free to share it with anyone you buy the gift for. Now you've got a video in your inbox. You're going to watch that video. With that setup, you're going to watch that video. You have no idea what's in that video, but you're going to watch that video with that setup. Now imagine you go to the video and the video goes, oh my gosh, we just got the word. You're one of Lauren's friends. She thought you would love the glow up vibe that you're going to get from our product. It's on the mail, in the way to you. Super excited that you're part of the family now. Lauren's one of our favorite people. She's an absolute rock star, but you already knew that because she's a friend of yours. Just wanted to say we're super excited to have you give it a try. Let us know what you think. And we look forward to connecting maybe at one of Lauren's parties sometime. Who knows?
That's awesome.
That would blow your mind. You would then send that to everyone that you bought the gift for. Everyone who received that gift would go, holy cow, look at this company. I've never even seen anything close to this. And they would become instant fans. Whether they liked the product or not, they would appreciate the attempt at personal and emotional connection. And by the way, you notice when I kind of riffed on what the video would say, didn't say the name of the person. So you could send it to all of them. Awesome. They didn't say, hey, we're going to send it to everyone. We said, let you send it to people. So you get to decide.
Hopefully they listen to this podcast because wow, that was just a golden nugget of information that you just provided me. Oh, no, that's awesome. And I think one of my favorite things about this entire conversation is my mind keeps coming back to this pattern recognition that you keep talking about. And I kind of sound like a broken record, but the fact is, there is even patterns in what you're saying. And I think
Yes.
what I really enjoy about conversations like these is that there's so many actionable things that customer or our customers and people who are listening to the podcast can take away from this. Because fact of the matter is, it all comes down to action at the end of the day. Meaning you can
Yes.
go on and on and on about strategy and this and that, but even the parts that you talked about, the 8 emotional phases, there's so many things you can do within that. So I hope that everyone listening takes a piece of that. But I think I'll end it on that note because that was just too fantastic. I think you really set the bar too high there.
Oh,
Um,
you're very kind. Thanks, Lauren.
no worries. And thank you for sharing all that information. And I'm sure all the people listening to the podcast, like myself, will go and buy that book because now I'm really curious to know more about this whole thing. And one thing I also really liked, which I was actually going to ask you if you didn't mention it, was does this apply to every company in your opinion? And you literally answered it yourself by saying anybody can do it, whether you're one person or 20 or 100 or whatever it might be, because
Yes.
that's so important. But thank you again for that.
Oh, it's
I'm
my pleasure. Here's the interesting thing, Lauren, if I can riff on this a little bit.
please, yes.
Lots of times when you are a small company, like 1, 2 employees, 3, 5, 10, you think, oh, if only we had more money. If only we had bigger budgets, we could do the things all the big people are doing, the big companies, the monster organizations, the juggernauts. Lots of times when you're in one of those big companies, you're like, if only we were small and we could be more nimble and
Yeah,
didn't have to get approval from 17 departments. Here's the thing, the grass always looks greener from where you're standing. The
exactly.
practical reality is wherever you are in your business, you have huge advantages when it comes to implementing these types of personal and emotional interactions. If you're small, it's easy. You can move quickly. You can do stuff without approvals. If you're big, you've got the budget to do crazy things and film fun things and do amazing presents because you can handle it at your scale. The only thing that is keeping any organization from creating remarkable experiences for their customers is their lack of creativity, their lack of willingness to try something new, to try something different, to go out on the edge a little bit. And it doesn't always work, and that's okay. What I think is fascinating is when we run a marketing campaign and it doesn't work, we never say, we should never do marketing again. But if we get a gift for a customer and it doesn't land and they don't write us a thank you note, or they're like, oh, thanks, and they don't seem really moved by it, we go, customer gifts don't work, and we stop the customer gifting program. Why is it that if we're in a retention interaction and something goes wrong, we make a sweeping decision that all retention activities are horrible? But if we're in a marketing or sales situation and we don't land the deal or we don't get the customer, we go,
Keep going.
well, I'll try another one tomorrow. We got to change that behavior. Take the
I love
same
that.
type of resiliency to failure that you have over on the marketing and sales side and apply it around your love bombs, your creative efforts to create connection with your customers. Because when you insulate it with that, I promise you, you only have to do probably at max 3 or 4 of these special little outreaches before you'll get some loop of feedback from the customer that reaffirms your decision to take a risk and try something interesting.
I love that. Wow. You are like the genie of retention knowledge, just the gift that
Well, I've
keeps on
spent a little
giving.
bit of you're kind to say, Lauren. I've spent a little time doing it, so I appreciate that
Just a
compliment.
little bit,
Thank you.
just a
Just a
touch.
little, just a scooch.
Awesome. Okay. With that, I'm going to end it on a couple questions.
Okay.
This is definitely one of my favorite parts of the podcast. I think I say this almost every episode. So my poor listeners, they have to hear the same comment every time, but it really is. It's a lightning round question.
Oh, all
So
right. Lightning
we
round. I'm
have
ready.
a few minutes left. What we're going to do is 3 lightning round questions, and you're going to answer it as quickly, as succinctly as possible. We're just going to learn a little bit more about you. And then we'll end off on an advice question. Okay. Are you ready? I see you got your sip of water. You're ready to go.
I'm
Got your
getting
stretches
pumped.
in.
I'm getting pumped. All right. I'm ready. I'm feeling it.
All right. Here we go. Remember, quick and succinct.
Okay.
Okay. First question. If you had to create a marketing dream team, which 3 marketers would you choose to form it with?
This is a good one.
Ooh, that's hard.
All right. All right. 3 amazing marketers that I would have on my dream team of marketers. Number 1, Brittany Hodak. She is the new author of a book about creating super fans.
She was on my
she's
podcast.
Oh, I love it. Oh, brilliant. You
Yeah.
already know Brittany. Woohoo. Brittany's
That's
amazing.
awesome.
She's a rock star. Go listen to that episode. She's incredible. She's a dear friend and just wicked, wicked smart when it comes to all things experience. Number 2, Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift is probably the most brilliant marketer of our generation. If you look at the things she has done, not only to launch her music, to reclaim and reimagine her music with the new releases she's doing of old music, and to connect with Swifties, her fans, and to do amazing things for them. Absolutely incredible. And number 3, the late, great Steve Jobs. I'm sorry, but this is a guy who created categories that didn't exist. He did things that prior to the work that he and the team at Apple were doing, people didn't have a context for. He was able to fashion possibility, potentiality, and billion-dollar businesses out of the ether. So Brittany Hodak, Taylor Swift, and Steve Jobs. That's my dream team of marketers.
It would be definitely very interesting to see Taylor Swift and Steve Jobs working together.
Oh, fascinating, right? Oh, and let's be clear. I want to be clear. Steve Jobs definitely had a lot of challenges, right?
For sure.
And working with him, a huge challenge. But if the question is best marketers, you'd be tough to find somebody that was better.
You're not wrong. I love that. That's a very interesting answer. And I hope Brittany might be listening to this podcast. That'd be awesome.
I hope so too. I'll let her know. She's on my dream team.
Awesome. Okay. Second question. Which movie franchise would you love to be in charge of marketing for?
Oh,
that's another hard question. My team
Lauren,
is too good
I love movies. These are tough. I love movies. All right. I got to say, I am a crazy rabid loyalist and have been for decades of Star Wars. I would love to be on the helm of Star Wars. Oh my gosh. Marvel could be a close second, mainly because there's so many different iterations and variations and metaverses. But I'm going to go with Star Wars. Old school is the best.
Okay. I love it. That's awesome. I was actually going to choose Marvel myself because I am a huge Wonder Woman fan.
Nice.
If anyone's listening, I have the Funk Pop Wonder Woman lady, and she just tells me to keep going every day.
Brilliant. I like it. I like it.
Awesome. Okay. And last but not least, it's always a piece of advice that I like to end on because of the fact that advice is good. Everyone has a different point of view, and it's always just that wonderful way to end a wonderful conversation that we've had. So is there a piece of marketing or life advice that someone shared with you once that has always stayed with you? And keep in mind, could be marketing or life. And some guests have gone so far as to combine both, which is really cool.
Oh, Lauren, I have benefited from so many mentors, so many guides, so many teachers, so much wisdom that I have had the privilege and the opportunity to be exposed to over the years. I'm going to go with one that may feel a little contrarian, but I think is relevant to the conversation that we have had today. My mom regularly says the following: if we knew the power of our words, we wouldn't speak. And while that may seem like an odd quote or piece of advice for when we've talked so much about marketing and communications and messaging, I often think about that in the context of don't use meaningless words when trying to connect with someone who matters to you.
I love that.
If you're going to have a conversation, have a conversation. If you're going to have an interaction, have an interaction. If you're going to say something, recognize that words matter. They have power. They have impact, and be cautious and judicious with how you use them.
Wonderful. Silence. Everyone listening is like, wow. No, I really like that. And the first thought that came to mind when you said that was I had read this book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Yes.
Yeah, Stephen Covey's book. Fantastic book.
And one of my favorite things about it was one habit that was seek first to understand before being understood. And I think it has some sort of correlation to what you said, but I think I remind myself of that 24/7 because you never know what someone else's experience has been or why they act the way they act. And I think words have a lot to do with that because people act irrationally sometimes, or you don't want to use meaningless words for people that you care about, or actually anybody really, because the fact is you're trying to understand others before you push your own agenda first. And I really like that way of thinking because it also pushes you to be more meaningful in every interaction that you have. And I think that's a good way to go in life and in marketing. So it kind of works for both.
I love it. I love it. Well, Lauren, thank you so much for having me on the show. Thanks to everybody who listened in today. So appreciate it. And good luck creating those remarkable experiences for your customers, your employees, for everyone in between in the first 100 days and beyond.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Joey.